bring up another speaker, and that's Ralph Cabana. He's Energy Program Coordinator and Co-Director, for the Natural Resources Defense Council. And just a word about Ralph to kind of fill in a little biographical headnotes here. He's Senior Attorney and Co-Director of NRDC's energy programs. And he joined them back in 1979. He acquitted himself in a debate during the election quite admirably on the radio program that I host. He's been a visiting professor of law at Stanford, at UC Berkeley, at Boalt Hall, that is, and a lecturer on law at the Harvard Law School, and has also been faculty member for University of Idaho's Public Utility Executives course for over a decade. He's also one of those power couple guys because he's married to Deborah Rohde, who is McFarland Professor of Law at Stanford, and delighted to have him here, Ralph Cabana.
In the tradition of this institution, you opened with an unapologetic optimist and you close with one. You have just heard a series of panelists instruct you in different ways that your job, and here we all look out at all of you and insist it is not just to contemplate different scenarios of the future, but to shape them. And it is in that spirit that I want to close, and Eamon has asked for a fierce sense of urgency. So I'm going to talk about 2030, but I'm going to spend more time on Thursday of this week. Thursday of this week is important for reasons that this group has particular cause to be aware of, because it was a year ago at the annual event of Sustainable Silicon Valley when many of us were gathered in this hall to hear the then newly minted chair of the California Air Resources Board, Mary Nichols, talk about what she hoped to do with what was then called and is still called the scoping plan for AB 32, California's global warming law. Now, Margaret Bruce appropriately raised that in the last set of questions. Let me just remind you all that the scoping plan is nothing more or less than the blueprint for achieving California's global warming pollution reduction targets from 2020 through 2050, nicely capturing the time frame of this forum. And the final adoption date is set for Thursday. It might go over to Friday. There is a fierce effort now to delay or to stop it, and I want to spend a few minutes talking with you all about what we will need to do together to move it forward. Now, first of all, Mary, if you look at what Mary said she would do a year ago, and I have the notes, and you look at what is actually in the plan, you'll find some extraordinary overlap and similarity. She pretty much telegraphed all of her punches a year ahead. Now, in describing this again, I want to emphasize I'm not talking to spectators. I am talking to the group. One of the interesting things, and Michael will find some way to exploit this in a future radio program about Silicon Valley, it is important to note that I also love the moment when Eamon said, is there any press in the room? It is, I think, instructive that of California's 11 principal climate and energy officials, the 5 members of the Public Utilities Commission, the 5 members of the Energy Commission, Mary Nichols herself, 6 of the 11 have very close ties to this community, can fairly be said to have come out of this community, a somewhat disproportionate number in light of the population of this community. And I am very confident that some of their successors are in this room at the moment, and I know that whoever the U.S. Secretary of Energy or the U.S. EPA Administrator ends up being, she will pay a lot of attention to the people in this room and to the policies we've worked on together. So let's think ahead for a moment. First of all, let me remind you all what's in the scoping plan, the key elements of it. It leads, its principal opening element are the energy efficiency standards and incentives that have been a major subject of discussion this afternoon. Hal and Arthur talked a lot about them in the water and energy context, and by the way, Arthur will be gratified to know that Mary Nichols knows very well that 20% of the electricity use in California moves water around or purifies it. And that will, energy efficiency incentives linked directly to water, electricity, and natural gas, and to vehicles and vehicle fuel economy, will be at the very heart of the scoping plan. The scoping plan will go on to establish an objective, a formal objective of getting 33% of California's electricity supply from renewable energy by 2020. Amy's innovative insurance projects for renewables will have unprecedented demand in that process. There will be a central element of the plan. Mary talked about it a year ago. It is still there. The initiative to reduce the carbon content of vehicle fuels And then there is an important new element of the plan, which was not prominently there, but which, as Henry well knows, reflects the land use possibilities opened up by Senate Bill 375 and the availability of some $20 billion of new financial incentives. And we have heeded Henry's admonishment that there's never enough money, but he has $20 billion more than he did 6 months ago. In all of that, we have the capacity to shape not just the Bay Area, but California, and then moving nationally and internationally. California really is providing much of the U.S. leadership on climate now, as we were reminded one more time when the opening remarks at the Poznan negotiations today were delivered by satellite by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. In framing the scoping plan, another thing that Mary has done that she was true to that I think speaks very powerfully to the values in this room and the objectives of those present. If you look at how she's proposing to do it, how are we going to cut global warming pollution by 30% compared to business as usual by 2020? How are we going to continue to push the trajectory down to 80% reductions by 2050? At the heart of it, I think, are a couple of principles that we all bear well to pay attention to, and they're part of why it's in some circles controversial. First of all, if you read the scoping plan, I'm often in contexts like this asked to debate or choose what's your preferred way forward to reduce global warming pollution. How do you feel about more nuclear? What about the role of solar? How much energy efficiency? The role and philosophy of the scoping plan is, I think, best captured in the words competitive procurement. That is, Mary doesn't undertake to pick the winners. What she tries to do is to create a series of competitions in which the winners and losers can emerge on the merits. And that is true whether you're talking about what resources meet our electricity and natural gas needs, what technologies go into improving vehicle fuel economy, what are the fuels that we will use to reduce carbon content and reduce global warming pollution simply from moving people and vehicles around. And finally, what exactly will we choose as the land use strategies for reducing global warming pollution? In all of these cases, it's a competition. There are people making big investments. And if you think you've got a winner, your job is to bring that winner forward and try to convince the investors that you're the best buy. Hal LaFlash and his colleagues take on a critical role in this, and the importance of utilities in general, in thinking about the future of the Bay Area economy, the national and international economy, is never clearer than in the scoping plan. One of the things to keep in mind, again in light of Henry's admonition that there's never enough money, if President-elect Obama's aspirations are achieved in terms of what he wants to see on energy and climate investment, he will mobilize about $150 billion of the federal budget over the next decade, and I know we all wish him well in that, and some in this room will help him do it. $150 billion. Hal and his colleagues in the electric utility industry have, in their capital budgets, from now to 2030, the critical date for purposes of this forum, that's an arresting amount of money. It's $1.5 to $2 trillion. It is more than 10 times what the federal government is likely to have to invest, and a much higher fraction, a much higher percentage greater than what the state of California is likely to invest. This is a critical part of the system. How that $1.5 to $2 trillion of capital investment from the U.S. utility industry, that's just the electric industry, how that will be invested through 2030 is a critical part of what the future will look like in both energy and climate terms, not just for the Bay Area, but for the entire country. And how the competition will play out between nuclear, solar, wind, all of the different technologies Hal put up on the board. Hal will not be, in the final analysis, an interested spectator on that one. He and his colleagues will, in the end, be writing the checks that will determine which are the winners and which are the losers. When I get involved in a debate over the future of nuclear power, as I sometimes do in the context of California's AB 32, I like to respond that what I think I can predict is that in a competition between the efficiency and the renewable resources that have been getting essentially all of California's investment for the past 20 years, and the nuclear plants, not one of which has been ordered since 1973 and actually built, I think I know the answer. But I won't be writing the checks. The people who will be writing the checks will be creating a fair competitive opportunity for nuclear, solar, wind, tidal, energy efficiency, and everything else, just as Hal described. The critical criteria to determining the winners and losers are who can deliver at the lowest cost and the lowest risk, create a robust portfolio that'll meet Californians' energy needs going forward, and that portfolio will be developed by utilities writing checks, not, I think, in the end, by public investment, except to the extent that you think utilities as regulated entities with a lot of public responsibilities could be seen as a kind of public investment. In what they do, nationally, as has been the case consistently over the years we've all worked together in Silicon Valley, of course, stakeholder groups like this one will have a critical role to play in determining what the future looks like and in influencing the regulatory process that has to oversee and approve those investments. And I have every confidence that everyone here will continue their view expressed over and over in this forum, that the top priority resource for the utilities should be energy efficiency that costs less than the power generation it replaces, and I can't for the life of me see why we can't establish the same principle on the water side as Arthur has rightly admonished us we need to do. As we think about the importance of the scoping plan, remember that this is at the subnational level for the United States of America, but really also for the world, the most ambitious plan that's been put forward to date. This is an economy-wide effort. This is a serious, focused attempt, not simply, and I have nothing but admiration for the many groups that are mobilizing volunteers, for the many cities that are setting targets, but what you need to know that's qualitatively different about AB 32 is this is an effort to organize an entire society, taking advantage of some of the best public officials, public servants, public employees anywhere in the world. California is probably the only state that has a public sector robust enough to try to do something on this scale in the United States. And this is the moment in which it is launching. The comment deadline on the scoping plan is Wednesday at noon. The hearings begin Thursday at 9 a.m., and the thing wraps up and a decision will be made by the close of Friday. Let me review with you briefly what the two principal lines of argument as to why we should not go forward are, in the hopes that many in this room will choose not to be spectators in this debate. The first line of argument, interestingly enough, the attacks are coming from opposite ends of the ideological spectrum, and I won't try to characterize which is which. One line of argument says that Mary and her colleagues have failed because they are insufficiently prescriptive. They are not regulating enough. They are putting excessive faith in Eamon's market state, at least on the market side of it. And by not ordering the reductions across all sectors at the levels needed, they're running the risk that manipulators and speculators will screw the whole thing up. That's one line of argument. I think when you look at the scoping plan, what you will discover is that there are, in fact, a robust portfolio of tools and vehicles available for getting these reductions. That yes, Mary is relying to some extent on markets, on systems for allowing trading of carbon emissions to drive down the cost of achieving the reductions, but that there is also a very significant regulatory element in the traditional best California sense, getting more energy efficiency through more aggressive investment by entities like Hal LaFlash, not as an unfunded mandate, but as an invitation to do more of what they do best. And there are a whole host of new initiatives reaching out into every part of the economy that supplements the cap and trading system, initiatives like SB 375, the new land use incentives. The other side of the challenge and attack is coming from those who are saying this is all too risky and expensive. Why should we go first? We're a tiny and inconsequential fraction of the problem. Why should we assume all these new burdens for California's economy and the environment? All these new burdens. And the best response I know of to people who are making that claim is a few good illustrations of what nonsense that claim represents. And one of the best is in the introduction to the 2008 annual report to the Sustainable Silicon Valley constituency, which makes the obvious and common sense point that the Sustainable Silicon Valley constituency, and Michael, this is worth an hour too, they've reached the 2020 target more than 10 years early. At no obvious, painful expense to them, it's made them more competitive. They're now poised to do more. And the real question for the rest of California and the world is how much longer do you want to withhold from yourselves the benefits that the Sustainable Silicon Valley membership have conveyed to their own employees, their own shareholders, and their own customers? That is a pretty powerful line of argument in the face of those who are saying that this is quixotic and impossible. I am counting on any number of those in this room to make it more forcefully and effectively than I ever could, not just on Thursday and Friday, but in the days and weeks and months after that, which will determine whether we are successful in getting this great effort launched, whether we can take it to Washington, D.C. and make it the basis for the U.S. national program, whether we can infuse it in the international climate negotiations that will go forward over the next year and decade, and whether ultimately we get to the successful outcome that Mary Nichols so effectively foreshadowed when she appeared before all of you last year. It remains only for me to call up to the podium Rick Rowe of Sustainable Silicon Valley for his concluding remarks, and as I do that, it occurs to me that if there are those in this room who agree with me that Sustainable Silicon Valley has achieved a great deal in its short life, who appreciate the model it has established and all of the ways in which it has increased the likelihood that we can win this great challenge that's imposed this afternoon, then a nice way of showing our appreciation to Rick Rowe and his colleagues would be to greet him up here at the podium right now. Thank you.
Welcome everybody else, who I very much want to thank for a fantastic afternoon. It's not a small nonprofit called Sustainable Silicon Valley that are achieving very much. It's a group of organizations, companies, cities, nonprofits who are leading the way because each of our partners pledges that they will voluntarily reduce carbon dioxide emissions in their operations and report to us each year. And I would like to thank them for this fantastic effort. In particular, there are 4 there marked in yellow who are sustaining partners, which means that they do contribute additional funds to Sustainable Silicon Valley and to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, the City of San Jose, LifeScan, and Symantec. Extra thanks for keeping Sustainable Silicon Valley going. We released 2 reports today. One you have in your folder, the other you just have the front cover of, but it's on our website as well. I don't know if Betty Cito from KEMA made it. Hey, great, sorry. Stand up, Betty. This report has been funded by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and we have KEMA who have written it, and we're very grateful they interviewed a number of our partners and other companies to produce what we feel is very essential is a first stab at an introductory document for small and medium businesses to improve their energy efficiency. Strangely, amongst the enormous amount of information about improving energy efficiency, we have never noticed that anybody actually wrote a sort of an introductory starting document. So this is our first shot at that, and we're going to follow up with 4 training classes in February based on the document, and if you represent any group of small and medium businesses, we'd love to talk to you because we're going to do them in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. Just getting to the point Ralph made, it's actually a group of not all our partners, but a group who've been reporting from 2000 to 2007 consistently. And amazingly, there's very few companies that sort of are publicly releasing information, or companies and cities, I should say, that go for that time period. And SSV is based on the importance of measurement. And I think we're going to learn an awful lot the more companies and cities that do track their information. And we're part of an effort with ICLEI this year with about 27 cities and counties to do this and start this process using protocol that ICLEI developed. But looking from 1990 to 2020, we had a peak in between in 2000, and to get back to 1990 levels, we need to decline 12% by 2020 from the 2000 level. One thing that's very important for legislation is nobody has 1990 data, organization by organization, bottom up, and that's very, well, okay, there's a couple that do. Bob Cormier at Foothill College does, and he's probably about the only person in the room that does, at least publicly sharing it. We've been getting mostly, now explaining what these leading partners have done, is they've demonstrated a 12% overall reduction in CO2 from natural gas and electricity alone from 2000 to 2007. We haven't been getting that much data about gasoline, and I think Henry Gardner said it all about gasoline, but we believe that by 2020, it is possible by following the lead of our leading companies and cities to reduce by that 12% just by reduction natural gas electricity alone on a profitable basis. And we think that's very important. Transportation is much more difficult, as Henry Gardner has said. I'd like to finish by quoting a couple of people, and Eamon Kelly's talk sort of made me feel this is more relevant. Mark Twain should have written this if he didn't. It is difficult to make predictions, especially about the future, and scenarios are a great way out. I've watched scenarios, I've been involved in scenario exercises going back about 15 years, and they're a terrific tool for avoiding the problem of making predictions about the future. But then there was another quote which was, and by a person in Silicon Valley, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And that, of course, was Alan Kay from, who was formerly of Palo Alto Research Center, another partner of Sustainable Silicon Valley. And unfortunately, I think we have invented our future and we've got to reinvent it again. But I think our partners are leading that effort, and I'd like to invite Bruce Paton up, our chair of the board, who is going to spend some time properly honouring our partners. By the way, for the partners who are here today, I have a certificate that you can pick up from me during the reception. And with that, introduce Bruce.
I have 3 tasks to complete before we're done. First is some thank yous. Second is to recognize our partners, and finally some closing thoughts on what all this means for sustainable Silicon Valley. First, really like to thank our sponsor, Sun Microsystems, and Laurie Duval for helping make this happen. Wonderful. Second is to recognize the event sponsors. We have 3 gold sponsors: the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, First Climate, and Pacific Gas and Electric, and 2 silver sponsors, Intel and the Palo Alto Research Center. And maybe the most important thank you is to Rick and the army of volunteers that have knocked themselves out to make this event go smoothly. Couldn't have done it without you. I want to go very quickly to recognize our partners. You'll note that that's a list of 99, and today we reach 100. So 3 Degrees, Actera, Adobe Systems, Advanced Micro Devices, Agilent Technologies, Akina Solar, Applied Materials, Bay Area Air Quality Management District, BD Biosciences, Big Fix, Calpine Corporation, Cargill Salt, CH2M Hill, Cisco Systems, City of Belmont, Brisbane, Burlingame, Campbell, Cupertino, East Palo Alto, Foster City, Half Moon Bay, Los Altos, Milpitas, Morgan Hill, Mountain View, Pacifica, Palo Alto, Redwood City, San Bruno, San Carlos, San Jose, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Saratoga, South San Francisco, Sunnyvale. Communications and Power Industries, the County of San Mateo, County of Santa Clara, County of Santa Cruz, CV Therapeutics, Dharma Merchant Services, Earthbound Homes, eBay, ESP, Environmental Software Providers, ETM Electromatic, Fenwick and West, Foothill De Anza Community College District, Franklin Templeton Investments, Glumac, Great Mall, Grove and Associates, Hewlett-Packard, Integrated Archive Systems, Integrated Design Associates, Intel, Kuhn Construction, LifeScan, LJ Engineering, Lockheed Martin Space Systems, Minerva Consulting, NASA Ames Research Center, NetApp, Northrop Grumman Marine Systems, Our City Forest, Pacific Gas and Electric, Palo Alto Research Center, Palo Alto Unified School District, Quadras Office Complex, RMC Water and Environment, Roche Palo Alto, Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum, San Francisco International Airport, Santa Clara University, Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, Santa Clara Valley Water District, Schering-Plough Biopharma, Seagate Technology, Sirius Materials, Sierra Club Loma Prieta Chapter, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Silicon Valley Microelectronics, Specialty Solid Waste and Recycling, Sun Microsystems, Sun Power, Sustainable San Mateo County, Symantec, Tarleton Properties, the Tech Museum of Innovation, the town of Atherton, of Colma, Los Altos Hills, Los Gatos, Portola Valley, Woodside, Toyota Sunnyvale, Wattstopper LeGrand, Webcore Builders, and announcing SSV's 100th pledging partner today. Yes.
I'd like to introduce Chris Page from Yahoo, and maybe talk her into saying at least 1 minute's worth of something, and why they're joining SSV, perhaps.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very conveniently located at the very end of the alphabet, so that worked out quite well. And thank you. This is a tremendous group. We've very much enjoyed coming to events before, and we're delighted to be members of this group of folks. So that's it. Thank you.
I've been very fortunate most of the last decade to make my living as an academic. My research focuses on voluntary and collaborative social and environmental initiatives. Now, it's risky at any time of the day to talk about research, particularly to a group from multiple sectors. At this hour of the day, it's downright dangerous. So let me cut to the punchline. In my area of research, looking at voluntary initiatives, there's a growing consensus among people around the world who look at these areas that the way to gain control of our future is to have voluntary initiatives that lead the way and let other public policies run to catch up. And I think Sustainable Silicon Valley has been a great example of that. We spent many years as a lonely voice talking about things like climate change. And now it's wonderful to have to scramble to keep track of all of the public policies that are emerging. We've heard a lot of messages today, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that I think I've heard. Maybe most important of all is that we need to elevate our game. We've done a lot, but we need to do an awful lot more. We need to learn to play well with others. We've had good partnerships with Joint Venture Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, ICLEI, various cities and counties. We need to do more. We need not to get our organizational or personal egos in the way. We need to make sure that we're cooperating effectively. We need coordinated efforts. There are many efforts on climate change right now, tugging individual organizations, including many of those in the room, in different directions. We need to pull together. Sustainable Silicon Valley will be part of an effort to pull those various disparate efforts together. We've been hearing more and more, and heard several times today, that we need to enlarge the conversation. Where are the faith-based communities? Where are the labor organizations? Where are the ethnic communities that are so important to Silicon Valley? We need to reach out and join those folks in this conversation. We need to insist that all of our leaders address the most important sustainability issues. SSV is a coalition now of 100 organizations across different sectors and very different points of view. We have been separate voices. We need to be a unified voice. We have many accomplishments to celebrate today, but we have much work to accomplish still. I think the most important message that I heard from virtually all of the speakers was that we really need to realize that whatever we do or whatever we don't do, we're choosing the future for ourselves and for our children. Thank you very much.